Professor Everisto Benyera, who is a professor at UNISA's Department of Political Science, joins us now to talk a little bit more about this. Prof, thanks so much indeed for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good evening to the viewers at home.
When Andre de Ruyter speaks about the scope of Eskom's problems being beyond Eskom, what do you think he's talking about? Is this the politics that's been rumoured, alleged to have been interfering over time?
Indeed, Peter, the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, does South Africa have an electricity crisis, or we have a leadership and ideological crisis? This is a very important question because it will frame the responses that we will develop in this conversation. But allow me just to paint a very brief background to the viewers so that we understand how we got to where we are today. For the 30 years, 1961 to 1991, Eskom completed 14 power stations. So that's a rate of 1 power station every 2 years. Fast forward to the next generation, which is the next 30 years, 1991 to 2021, Eskom only completed 3 power stations. So that's a rate of 1 power station every 10 years. The 3 power stations that were developed between 1991 and 2021 are Majuba, Medupi, and Kusile. You and me know that especially Medupi and Kusile were bewildered with all the available problems, technical faults, allegations of corruption, mismanagement, and so on and so on. That is on the technical bit. But on the political bit, on the political front, what we are facing in South Africa is an existential misalignment. What do I mean by that? By an existential misalignment, I am alluding to the fact that we expect people to solve problems that do not affect them. Our leaders travel in blue light brigades. They do not stop at traffic lights. They are always on the fast lane, literally and figuratively. These are generally poor people that are not economically poor. They go to private hospitals. They've got bodyguards. Their security is catered for. There were even reports that cabinet ministers and senior government officials were being provided with electricity generators so that they do not experience electricity load shedding. So the question that I have to ask ourselves as South Africans is, how do we expect people to solve problems that do not affect them? They imagine these questions, these problems. They have to imagine what load shedding means because they do not live it. And how then do they solve a problem that does not affect them? Secondly, Peter, if you may allow me, we lack something that can be termed technopolitics, which is the ability to align technical knowledge with our challenges as a developmental state. All the countries that have developed, they've always aligned their political ambitions with their technical know-how. In South Africa, we have a huge misalignment between our technical abilities and the politics that we want to pursue. There is that misalignment. And lastly, and very importantly, we lack effective ideologies in the post-colonial apartheid state in Africa. We are seeing the shortcomings of ideologies such as rainbowism in South Africa, Chimurenga in Zimbabwe, Ujamaa in Tanzania, African humanism in Zambia under Kenneth Kaunda, Harambee in Kenya, authenticity under Mobutu Sese Seko in the then Zaire. We need to have an effective ideology that guides the state. This, in my view, Peter, is how we got where we are today. Load shedding did not start today. It has been with us for the past 15 years. It has just increased in its intensity.
If that's the case, then, can the current leadership with the ideology that they have been carrying for decades in the DNA of its party, its leadership, fix the problem or not? Because you're almost suggesting the kind of thinking that got us into this situation is not the kind of thinking that will get us out of it.
I have alluded to earlier on in some conversations elsewhere that we do not have an energy crisis in South Africa. And indeed in Africa, we have a leadership crisis. An energy crisis means that we don't have coal, we don't have sunshine, we don't have wind energy, and all those ingredients that are needed to generate electricity. We have one of the biggest rivers in Africa, the Congo River. We have 3 big electricity generating projects that have been politicized and almost gone dormant, the Inga 1, the Inga 2, and the Inga 3 along the Congo River. You can add that the current Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam that is being built in Ethiopia, and how that has been fraught with a lot of politics that has almost extended to becoming a front for the United States and China. But let's park that and come back to the leadership crisis at home. There is no political consequences for mismanagement in parastatals, in state-owned enterprises. And what we see is that the management style almost gravitates towards management by commission of inquiry. If there are allegations of state capture, we appoint the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. If there are allegations and challenges with tax administration and governance by SARS, we appoint the Nugent Commission of Inquiry. If there's problems with the school fees structure in our tertiary institutions, we appoint the Fees Commission of Inquiry. We appoint the Marikana Commission of Inquiry. We appoint the Seriti Commission of Inquiry into allegations of fraud, corruption in the arms deals as we know them. And we can also talk about the Kampembe Commission to investigate the Scorpions and recommend whether they should be merged with the South African police. So we see a proclivity towards delegating the most important decisions to commissions of inquiry. And by its very nature, a commission of inquiry is almost a legal process that is protracted and that focuses only on the terms of reference that would have been prescribed by the principal. So there are the politics of what should be included in the terms and conditions of the terms of references, for the commission of inquiry, and the truth may actually by omission of the terms of reference. And finally, there is the issue of the cabinet. We cannot argue against the fact that the cabinet is bloated. We cannot argue against the fact that the presidency is now very bloated to a point where the president is almost ruling by proxy. There were experts that were the investment envoys that were brought on board. Now there is talk about the Minister of Electricity to come in. So the challenge here, Peter, is that the challenges that we are facing as a country in South Africa are not confronted head-on by the president. Rather, there appears to be a proclivity to outsource them. Others have even gone further and argued that the president has quote-unquote checked out since the days of the para issue. That is when he wanted to be out. That is when consciously he checked out of his office. The vice president, on the other hand, publicly announced at the funeral of his brother that he is technically out. Then you look at Andre de Ruyter, he is out. There is no CFO, Chief Financial Officer at Eskom. So there is a leadership crisis on top of a leadership vacuum. And what we need in South Africa and in Africa is a just and ethical leadership. Leaders that put themselves in the last when there is a queue. Leaders who make decisions in the best interest of the people, not in the best interest of the political party or themselves, but in the best interest of the nation, because they are entrusted to run the country and not their political parties only, Peter.
Professor Benyera, I wish we could talk for a little bit longer, but perhaps we pick up this conversation again in the near future. Thanks very much indeed there for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for the invite, Peter, and good night to you and the viewers.
Good night to you. All right, that's Professor Everisto Benyera, who's a professor at UNISA's Department of Political Science, saying that we don't have an energy crisis, we have a leadership crisis. We're seeing CEOs and we're seeing all manner of people out, a CFO out, and yet we have all the ingredients that we need to solve the power drama.